we just said, is there anyone that maybe wasn't a fan that you can speak that now? And there was like nobody who like said a word. There was not one peep. I mean, really, it's just, your book has been just loved everywhere. I mean, we've seen
Thank
it
you.
blowing up, and we're so happy for you. So welcome. And
I'm so fortunate. You write a thing, you hope somebody likes some part of it. It's gotten some really great reviews, and not just like, you know, the publication people, but, you know, my sister, my family, people who grew up in the Robert Taylor homes, people I didn't know. So I'm really thrilled about the reception.
Good. Well, we're here. We welcome you. And I'm Ivana, and Kelly's here too. And I don't know if you remember me, but I met you at the bookstall back like months ago. And you were such a great speaker. And then of course I'm like, I wonder if you'd come to our book club chat. So
it feels like it was years ago. I'm gonna like keep up with the chat too.
Yeah. Oh, you're so sweet. We can help.
People say like great things over in the chat, and then if you're not paying attention, you miss it. Yes. Cool.
Yeah. So we're here, and we just, you know, maybe we could just start by just saying, welcome, kid. Maybe you could tell us just kind of how did this book come to be? Because I know it wasn't overnight. So
yeah. So I have been writing for a long time, like since I was 10 years old, and nobody like wanted to read those things because they were terrible, but you got to start somewhere. And then I studied creative writing in undergrad. Like honestly, when I was in college, I thought I wanted to be an athletic trainer, but then my advisor was like, look at these grades, but look at your English grades, they're perfect. And so that was sort of the thing that made me think like, maybe you should take this writing thing seriously. Like you really are obsessed with literature and like actually writing your own things. And so I was studying at like a 4-year liberal arts school, but then I transferred to a performing arts school here in Chicago, Columbia College Chicago, because they had like an actual fiction writing major. And when you looked at their catalog, there were 55 different writing classes. And I was just like, this is it. Like, this is what I want. So I had started like writing stories, and just like, you know, you do your homework, you have to write things. And I was writing all these stories about this group of girls set in the Robert Taylor homes where I grew up. Every time we had a writing assignment, I was like back in these buildings. And then one day I realized like, I think this story wants to be a novel. And then I started the like painful journey of trying to turn 3 short stories into a novel. There were the messy years where like this wasn't working, but then I was working at a community center. My mother and sister were still living in the Robert Taylor homes when I was in undergrad, and I was like living on campus in the dorms because why not? And I just sort of thought about like, okay, I know 12-year-olds who are going to go through this process of gentrification. They have no idea they're going to have the rug pulled out from under them. They'll have to leave their friends, their neighborhood, their school. And so I sort of gave that storyline to these girls who were prior to that just sort of hanging out and jumping rope. And trying to like stay friends, because I don't know if you guys remember like your girlfriends growing up. Like there was always some like veggie conflict about something, right? So I just kind of like, I thought about like, okay, if you're 12 and you sort of even catch wind that like your neighborhood is coming down, like how would you freak out? And like, how would that manifest itself? And how would your family behave? And so that's how we sort of ended up with a mom who wouldn't tell her kids anything, and a daughter who was losing her mind for not knowing anything. But yeah, that's sort of how it came together. And if I mined my own life for something, it was the different places in the book. The places in the book are all places where I've like lived, hung out. Like when Fifi goes to her aunt's house in Roseland, I had an aunt who lived in Roseland. I characterized her house like the way I remembered it. And so it's a fictional story. The girls are like created, but these places are like very real places that either used to exist in Chicago or they are still standing. That was a long answer.
No, like over the course of what, 10 years ish?
Like closer to 15 years. 15? Yeah, and it's fascinating because I'm moving into like working on my next book, and the circumstances are so different. Like I actually know how to write a book now, and I'm not working 3 part-time jobs while I write this book. Like it's gonna be such a different ride, and I'm so excited about what that's gonna look like. And then maybe I'll get to write an essay about it. Like, hey, this is how you can write a book if you don't have to work through a job and go to school and try to date, you know? Maybe you can get it done in a couple of years.
You were clearly going through many, many things in your life. This product is, you know, fantastic.
Yeah. We were sort of growing up together. I joke that like we sort of came of age together. I was in my 20s when I started this book, and I was like in my later 30s when I finally like got my agent, who happens to be a very editorial agent. So we revised it for 2 more years. So you can imagine that by the time this book was like acquired by a publisher, I was like ready to never see it ever again. But I'm in love with it again now. It's fine.
Well, I feel Toya, I'm Kelly. I'm co-hosting with Ivana.
Okay.
I feel like that's the thing about debuts is you have this story marinating in your brain for years and years. And you have, you know, not necessarily all of this physical time, because like you said, you're working in school,
Right.
but you have mental time to devote to these characters and these stories that make a home really in your brain and in your heart. And I'm curious, just, you mentioned working on your second novel. How, you know, do you feel rushed? Like, how does that feel different when you've had like a decade of time versus, I don't know if you have publishing deadlines for the second book, but does it feel different in that way from a time perspective?
Yeah, so what's funny is like no one is looking for this book. In fact, I've only my last
we're looking.
We're all waiting.
No, but like last time I station's been out for about 2 months, and no one expects me to start on book 2. But what I want you to think about is like if you were stuck with a story and trying to polish it for 15 years, there's a backlog of things that you want to write. And it's funny because I was actually taking like a little vacation this summer, and I won't give you like the whole story, but let's just say that the book I wanted to write, I'm still not gonna get to write that because Last Summer on State Street is still like knocking on my door, like, I think you've got more to tell here. So I think because like everything is so fresh, I'm having all these conversations, I'm working on like a TV pilot for the book. I like have so much information about these characters, their backstories, like their futures and all that. And so I think it would just be wise to see if I could like get a draft down while things are, you know, bubbling up right now.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's very smart. Can you tell us a little bit more about this TV thing that you just threw in there really quickly? Is that like public knowledge?
I secretly, so I watched so much TV, like so when I was a kid, TV used to be the thing you did with your family. Like if anybody remembers The Simpsons and how they all run and like plop down on the couch, like that was my family. And it was like a bonding experience because also when you grow up poor, there's no TV in everybody's room. There's like one TV in the living room. And so I think there's a little bit of that, like you do it together. And so I've been watching like classic TV and like, you know, what's current and fun and just like for my whole life. And I think I was excited to try out writing in this sort of form. And then I learned that like TV writers write with other writers around a big table and there's food. And I was just like, I have not been living the life. So I think I love the idea of this story as a TV show versus a feature film because we know these characters, they all have so much story to tell. And so I told my film agent, like, I don't know if it'll be trash or not, but I'm gonna write a pilot and I'm gonna send it to you. He said it wasn't trash. And so we're crossing our fingers that someone else would get excited about it. And, you know, Fifi and Station and the crew, you know, could show up as a series. And so that's kind of, yeah. So there's a lot of prayer and there's some conversations happening. And so if you are a praying tribe, you know, definitely put us on your list because I think that'd be so much fun to explore them like in that way.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think everybody would like to see characters come to life and, you know, see them. Yeah. Well,
and it's funny because you'll feel like you know them so well. Like, you know, of course there are things that get adapted, but I don't know. I feel like oftentimes books become feature films. There are like lately we've had some TV shows, but it's like you kind of would slide into the story world having sort of a little bit of a cheat sheet. So it could be cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we can't wait. So everybody has been asking and wondering, and maybe like even me, like confusing when we're reading that this is a memoir. And I mean, so many times we were all saying it's like we think that this is you and this is everything is your life. And it's just we're dying to know. I mean, how
Sorry,
much
guys. Someday I'll write a memoir. Right now, I don't think it's so interesting. I did grow up in the Robert Taylor homes. I was a little Black girl who jumped double dutch with her friends, but I'm actually the kind of person who was socially a floater. So I had friends who would never hang out with one another, and I was cool with like so many different pockets of people in the projects, but also like at my school. I didn't go to a school in the neighborhood. I like took a bus all the way out, like an hour out to go to like a performing arts school. But yeah, like this isn't my story, but what is sort of true to life is that I had a mom who was like Fifi's mom, who like braided people's hair and like took my friends downtown to the fireworks and just like loved on everybody. Fifi's mom has like this strained relationship with the church. My mom was not like that. We had to go to church all the time. So I think some of what happens in Precious's life is informed by the folks who actually did go to church all week, which wasn't my family. We went to church like every other weekend, maybe. Like we were just, it wasn't, there was some work to be done there. So I kind of like, there's so much that like I took from my life, but kind of spent it a little bit. Mama Pearl is a grandmother, but she's not like my girl. My grandmother would never have a pistol in her purse. She was like the most like perfect prude of all time, and Mama Pearl is like cursing all the time and she's packing and just, so I think like I knew people like the folks in this book, and then some of it was imagination, and it is the biggest compliment that people will say like, is this your life or is it a memoir, because I'm like, yes, I tricked them.
Right.
So sorry guys.
Well, it's so real and so raw that it felt like it had to be. So but it is pieces of you, so that's great.
Yeah, but that's why I love working in fiction, because I don't have to answer to anyone. I can just make stuff up, and I do try to do my due diligence to research like that my memory is correct. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of like history of Chicago in my brain just from like talking to my grandma and just people in the neighborhood, and so I just had all this information that I knew, and I'm like a sloppy writer. So my first drafts are just whatever I want them to be. And then I go back and tighten up things, make sure I'm not lying too much. But I love fiction because you can really, you can have as much like historical stuff in there as you want. And then you can also just kind of make things up. Whereas if this were a memoir, I would have to like really make sure that I wasn't like making things up, and that I have to like fact check everything. And as a creative like writer, that's not fun for me. So I'm gonna stay in this whole fiction world.
Well, we love it.
Yeah, Brenda mentioned in the chat, the characters are so real and deep. And I think that's exactly it. That's what we all felt. We're like, well, this has to be true because she's evoking such emotion and such like a strong sense of place that it just felt so like, we're like, well, this had to be from her, so I think that's just a testament to your writing and what you were able to draw out of these characters. So well done.
Thank you. Well, I will tell you too that because I'm revising the script one more time. I mean, that's a lie. I'm gonna revise the script forever, but I'm in the middle of a revision right now. And the other day, like I had such a like kind of like heavy emotional day, and I couldn't figure out why. And I'm like, oh, you're like working on like a tough part of their lives. And when people write me and say like, oh, you made me feel this, or oh, this is a gut punch, like I feel it too. Like there are times when I'm writing some of the heavier parts and like I'm getting teary, and it's just like, you don't, I as a writer, like I can't possibly write these things and make them feel real and not feel them too.
That's good.
So you're not alone.
Yeah. Well, we're going to open the chat up to a few questions here from some of our other readers. Michelle, go for it.
Oh, there we go. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes, we can.
Well, you are by far one of the most enthusiastic authors I have been a part of an author chat with. So thank you for that. Because, you know, when it's dark on the East Coast, you know, you need something to get motivated. But the question I have is, because I'm such a sports nut and I'm also a bookish person, is the Steph Curry book club situation. How did that come about? How did he choose your novel, and just the impact on literacy for, you know, kids of color? I don't think it can be underscored enough. I think it's so fantastic. And if you could just explain how that came to be and when you're notified, and did that become a springboard for all these other projects?
And for people who are not sports nuts, could you explain what that is? I know who Steph Curry is, and I know a little bit about his literacy thing, but maybe not everybody knows, you know.
Let's also pretend that not everyone knows who Steph Curry is. So Steph Curry, okay, I'm going to say this. I said this once before and somebody almost fainted, but I'm just trying to give you some context. Okay. Steph Curry, I believe, is sort of up there or headed towards the sort of impact that like Michael Jordan had on basketball, that Kobe Bryant had on basketball, like as a person who is like really talented as a basketball player, but also really influential outside of the court. So Steph Curry, who is that? Steph Curry is also a Christian, and he and his wife, like, they're in Oakland, and they do a lot of things like to support literacy. So they like open libraries. They have these like little small library pop-ups. And so there's this company called Literati. They have a series of book clubs. So Roxanne Gay has a book club with Literati. I'm like blanking on all kinds of people, but it's about maybe 13, 14 people. And so each they call them luminaries. Each luminary has like, they name their book club, and they pick every month who they want the people in their club to read. So to answer like your first question, I am so fortunate to have a publisher with wide-reaching arms, right? And so what happens with a big publisher like HarperCollins is that they submit books to Good Morning America, all the book clubs, Seth Meyer, like all like huge, like sort of media entertainment outlets. And then those folks get to say like, oh, this looks good, or like, that's not what we want right now. Or they don't even get to a book like mine because they've got a backlog from 2020, right? That is like a real thing. So Steph Curry's team, like either read the proposal for my book or, just like a description of it. And they were like, send us some copies. They read it. They're like, we love it. We think this will be perfect for August. And so that's how it happens. And I just think, like, to your point, there are people who are like big time athletes, or like they love basketball, but they don't like read books. That's just not their jam. But now they're like, oh, Steph Curry has a book club. I'll read the books that he recommends. And so there are going to be people who pick up this book who typically would not have. He is icing at this point, because there's like the New York Times, Publishers Weekly, like really, really huge sort of bookish kind of folks who gave me like really great reviews. And then Steph Curry's team made their announcement mid-July. So there was already like really great publicity. This book was in so many hands already. And then it was like Steph Curry showed up and they like made an announcement. He recorded a video to me, like talking about the book, like actually said my name twice. I was like, what is your life right now? But it was just really great. And I'm hoping in the future, listen, I'm being honest with you folks. I'm hoping in the future that like we'll do something together, because they're always opening libraries in Oakland, and he has all these like youth programs, and like I think it'd be cool to do some of the stuff he's doing on the West Coast, like here in Chicago. So that's kind of how it all came together.
Oh my gosh, one of our readers, Kristen, got your book from Literati. And
oh, nice.
how great. How fun.
And there's gonna be his little sticker on it forevermore now. It says like Steph Curry Book Club. It's all got the foil. You know, you've seen them. Oprah, Reese's Book Club. So I've got a little bling on my cover now.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, if we were gonna go where to next? Let me see here.
Melissa.
Hi, Toya. I love
Hi.
this book too. I know everybody has, but I just love this book. I was born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah.
And
Which one?
So, Addison.
Yeah.
It was west. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all these things, like when you talked about going down for the fireworks and all that, I mean, we did that.
Yeah.
And so it gave me such a, gosh, I feel like I'm going to cry, which I don't mean
It's
to,
okay.
but it just gave me, just to look at it in such a different way and to see things. I just loved it. And I love the way those girls were girls and they were in these awful situations in some cases, but they were just girls and and you wrote them as girls, like as the age they were. So
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. The question I have, I'm wondering, you're still in Chicago, I'm assuming.
I'm in Chicago land. I am not in the city anymore. I moved to the suburbs last summer.
Okay. Well, so since like, you know, they shut down Cabrini Green and took down Robert Taylor and everything, what's changed? Has there been change, or is it the same? Have things gotten worse? Are things better? I mean, there's a lot of violence and that kind of stuff, but what's changed?
You know what? I think your question is sort of, your question comes out of this idea that the reason they knocked down Robert Taylor was because it was contributing to the crime in the city. Is that like a fair? Right. So
yeah,
I would argue that the reason they knocked down Robert Taylor is because, or like all the housing projects, is that it became obvious that they were not going to maintain those properties. And like, sure, there was tons of crime. But if you don't, if you have a property that like the people who own it, they don't like repair the elevators, they don't take care of the grounds, they don't, there are no consequences for like the first crimes that were happening, right? And so when they tore the buildings down, people moved into other neighborhoods, probably mostly like the other parts of the South Side, and then maybe some neighboring Midwestern states. But I don't know that you're going to find statistics that say like the crime, the crime numbers went down because they got rid of those projects. Like, I think that was like not the issue, because we were having crime all over the city and we still do. And I just think it was a terrible idea to construct public housing in that way. And then I just think it got to the point where like no one could deny that anymore. And so it became this embarrassment, and it was like, let's get rid of these eyesores, let's kind of spread people out. And so that's like my theory. But that's what I think.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Just to bounce off of that, because before you hopped on, Toya, Kelly was saying about the housing projects, the association, right? The HOSA, was it?
The CHA or like sort of HUD, it like goes all the way up to the government, like how they were funded and built originally.
Right. That was some part of our questioning, was how did their lack of attention to the buildings themselves and just the area itself affect the outcome of what had happened. I mean, you kind of just brushed up on that, but I know you mentioned it too in the book about how, you know, nobody was keeping.
Yeah, I mean, even like this scene where Fifi's on the elevator and the elevator is like dropping like it's a ride at Six Flags, you know, or whatever. Like, people were living in these like horrendous conditions. And I think if the housing projects were standing today, there would be like protests from all kinds of folks, like humans shouldn't live like this, you know? And I think they sort of try to get ahead of it, and they were like, we need to tear these buildings down.
But when they were first built, was it different in the
Yeah,
beginning?
they were lovely. And my grandmother moved into the Robert Taylor homes about 2 years after they constructed them. There were trees, there were families that sort of knew each other because they were all coming up from the South. Like that stuff that's like sort of written about in the book, and it's like very real. Like people, you hear like the Great Migration. People were a part of the Great Migration. They moved up and spread out all over Bronzeville, which is sort of like one pocket of the South Side. Because if you think about like in the 1940s, I don't even think there were Black people past like 3,500 South. So it's like there was like a very small pocket that was called Bronzeville, and that literally was like all the Black people who'd moved up from the South, like contained in this one little area. So they built the Robert Taylor homes as part of a solution to house so many Black people coming up from the South, because you also couldn't move to other parts of the city. Like they would be met with like racist attitudes and actual violence. And so no one talks about that. Like, you know that Black people live on the South Side and the West Side in Chicago, and there's a very specific reason that we're so concentrated, and it's because once upon a time you could only live in certain parts of the city, and they were existing slums. So they were already slums, and when you've got like a slum, like literally the ground is muddy, there are horse stables, like crazy stuff, and they like sort of pave that land and build these gorgeous tall buildings. It's like, whoa, look at this. This is amazing. I want to live there. And it was fine until you hit like the late 70s, and then things start to deteriorate. And then people start to move out, people who have like great jobs. And then you're sort of left with folks who don't work at all and new gangs that are forming. And so it just kind of deteriorated like over the years. It's interesting. The book I'm working on is going to sort of deal with like that first summer on State Street. So you stay tuned.
Oh, how fun.
That's interesting.
Okay. Beatrice.
Hi, I just wanted to let
Hi.
you know, of course, along with everybody else, how much I love this book.
Thank
And
you.
I thought it was the perfect amount of pages and just the way you told the story. And I just had a question though. I love the way you had Fifi be so non-judgmental about her friends and wanting them to be close, and just always trying to keep that group of girls together. And as the story went on, I was putting a lot of faith into the character of Stacia. And I really wanted her to like overcome her family dynamic. And I just got upset when she decided that she was gonna beat up Tanya and really hurt her. And I was wondering like why you had that happen in the story.
So you have to remember that they're 12-year-olds, right? Which means they're children. They don't have their sort of logic in order. A character like Stacia is not very emotionally compassionate. She just wants what she wants. And at that time, she wanted to be sort of ripping and running around the neighborhood with her friends. And like, she wanted to like get involved in some dicier things, right? So in her mind, it's like, I'm finally getting what I want. I'm gonna have me some fun. And like, you know, she's also like, she's been wrestling with like jealousy and feeling like Fifi is kind of her own. And who is this kid who comes in? There are all kinds of reasons why she would want to beat up Tanya. But I also want you to remember that like, we're talking about a child. So her like emotions and her impulsiveness, like all those things are at play. And I know that like I've sort of juxtaposed her against someone like Fifi, who's like compassionate and loving and like just very, you know, but I wanted to like lay out 4 very different kinds of girls. And Stacia is she's a character I have rarely seen in literature. And I'm always curious about how people think Stacia, if she actually did sort of overcome her upbringing, or if she's on the path to overcoming her upbringing. But I know she's a tough pill to swallow. I know what she did was like terrible. And yeah, I definitely.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted Miss Price to have more of an influence. Like I wanted that to be more of an influence for her. I was rooting for this character. I put a lot of hope in it. I was a teacher, and but some of the girls I taught were, a little bit like her at times. And I always, was hoping that my influence and how I affected them would help them to push past certain issues. So
but sometimes you don't get to see it. Like sometimes the seeds that you plant don't manifest themselves until decades later out of your line of vision, right? So and I wanted people to root for Stacia and hope that she would make the right decision, and that and hope that Miss Pierce's influence would, but sometimes it takes a long time, and it takes like falling down and feeling crippling guilt for decades. Like sometimes it takes all of that for someone to start turning a corner, especially when you have a mom like Gail and all of the siblings that Stacia grew up around. It's tough. It's really tough. But yeah, I can totally see your point of view as a teacher. You're just like, come on, Stacia.
Yeah.
Be better.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Loved it.
Thanks. Maybe we can ask Laura's question for her. Laura has some questions too, but just because of her phone situation, she said we can ask her questions. So she was wondering if you could talk about the lease compliant policies, or I'm sorry, the complaint policies and like the applications, ramifications.
Yeah, so this is going to be really fuzzy. The term lease compliant is an actual phrase though, and it's like some legal jargon sort of that is associated with the Section 8 voucher. So when residents, I think the idea is that the Chicago Housing Authority wanted to, their logic was that they don't want to send people into the city, into like the, I'm like blanking on the word, but it's like if you had people on your lease who had like a criminal record, or they were not paying rent, like just all sorts of, then I guess in their minds, like these people were like a menace to society, and they would not send them out into the larger Chicago, right? And so what they would do is, like, if you were not lease compliant, you did not get a Section 8 voucher, and then you were allowed to move into other Chicago housing properties. And at the time, it's like the CHA owned Cabrini Green, Robert Taylor, every public housing facility was owned by the Chicago Housing Authority. So when they had to like relocate people, in order to like empty the buildings so they can tear them down, they would either let people like move out because they were lease compliant, or if they were not lease compliant, they had the option to move into another CHA property, which is probably another housing project. Like this is not like a great situation. And so, yeah, that term, it's like a check mark that meant, okay, you can pack your things and you can look for other places to live, like in the city.
Thank you. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's where Fifi wanted to know everything from her mom about that too.
Yeah.
So, and then even just the cover design, we always love hearing about.
Oh, I love this story. Let's talk about it. So the designer, who I have yet, like, I really do want to like shout her out. The UK release of this book, they decided to keep the cover because it's so amazing. They're like, nothing that they came up with was better than this cover. So they changed the font, they moved some things around, but it's literally the same cover.
I feel like
and
that never happens. That's amazing.
It does not. But it's also like I have such a like I have such a vision for what this cover, like what I wanted it to look like. She designed it, but like from the beginning, I knew that I wanted the colors to be like hot, like the sunset, and like colors that little girls wear in the summer. And so there was a tiny bit of pushback. And I was like, you're gonna have to trust me on this. Like, you're just gonna have to trust me on this. And so when I got the design of the cover, but it had cool colors on it. And I was like, I love this design. This is incredible. Please remove these trees, because there were no trees. And then also, I need you to try this in like sunset, blazing hot colors. And then they did it, and like we loved it. And they were still a little bit like, I don't know. But everybody says love this cover. Like the American Library Association like used it for their it's like a pamphlet, I think. They take off all the words, and like it's the cover for that. Like everybody loves this cover. And so I just think it was like a collaboration of like a really incredible designer, who is a woman I will definitely shout out on all my social media like really soon. And yeah, and then just like sticking to my guns about like how I see this color. And then I also said like I need like the girls on the cover, and not like photographs. They could be in kind of like shadow. And then we played around with that. We played around with collections of girls, and like it came together like piece by piece, but just really great communication. But we all love this cover.
Yeah, it is stunning. And Laura Beth, the one who had originally asked this question, I think she was finding it interesting because it is just such this vibrant cover. And then it kind of lies in contrast to some of the aspects of the girls' upbringing in this area. You know, they had some dark parts in their life, but also really contrasted with these moments of like a beautiful community and joy. And so I think, you know, she just found it interesting, like the color balance. We were having a good conversation about that. So I love that you pushed for like these vibrant colors. It just represents so much.
I know a lot of like visual artists and some folks that I really respect, like documentarians who have to think about like color and things like that. And when I floated it by them, they were like, you know, these colors don't make me think of Chicago. And I was like, I'm gonna change your mind about how you think about Chicago. Because it's not, when you read other books about that are set in housing projects with kids, it's like steel and gray and black and white. And I'm just like, that's not the story I'm telling. And I need you to trust me on it. And so, yeah, like you're not alone. Like people don't think, when you think inner city and project, you don't think these gorgeous colors. And I really did want to tell a story with this cover.
I love that. I think you absolutely succeeded in that. So
thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I have a question for you regarding just your editing process. Like you mentioned that it took a long time. Were there any major plot points that you changed throughout the editing process, or were there things that you really wanted to push and your editor was, felt differently, or like, can you talk about some of the differences in your earlier manuscripts as it came to, the final copy that we have now?
Yeah. So I think when the publishing folks got involved, like my literary agent and my editor, they were just pushing me to like make it better, but no big changes. All the big changes happened when I was in grad school, but they weren't like, get rid of this. Like they were very respectful notes. Like my thesis advisor, actually Michi and his storyline was a totally different novel. And my thesis advisor said, we were like having a little session and he's like, you're not gonna like this, but I think you should put these books together. And I was like, you're insane. That's my book too. but I'm the kind of writer who will try things. I'll keep my original manuscript and I'll try what you suggested. And if it fails, I will go back to my original plan. But if it's better than what I was thinking, then like, I'm gonna keep it. And so I made Michi Fifi's older brother, and it just layered the story in a very special way. Like I was so determined to make this a book about girlhood And I know we have brothers and we have dads and we have uncles and we have teachers, but I just think sometimes in literature, they take over the story. Like it becomes like how we as women serve the men in our lives. And I just wanted this to be a story about girls. And that's why like you only can see so much of Michi's life because Fifi wouldn't have known, like she wouldn't have had access to that. And I did that very intentionally because this is not Michi's story. It's not a story about the guys. You see the guys downstairs running around and you only see them as much as the girls would like sort of know. So yeah, so just like combining two books was a thing. And then I don't know how many of you know Audrey Neffenegger. She wrote The Time Traveler's Wife. She is a good friend now, but she used to be my professor in grad school.
Wow, that's amazing. That's one of my favorites of all time. What a cool connection.
She's like an amazing human, period. And so when I was in her, I took like this advanced novel writing workshop with her. She was already a big deal, like when I met her. And most people don't know that she's trained as an artist. And just one day she decided to like write a novel, and it was The Time Traveler's Wife. But if you've read The Time Traveler's Wife, it's written with dual first person narrators. And so she loves a good like dual narrator. And she's like, I think all these girls should have their own chapters. And I was like, what are you talking about? So, but I did it in the semester I was in with her. I tried it out. And then at the end of the semester, I kept Fifi and Stacia. So once upon a time, Stacia had her own chapters. And in later drafts, my agent was like, it's kind of inconsistent. She's like, I don't think it's working. And then I just kept that in a drawer somewhere. And then one day I decided, I am going to take some stuff from Stacia's chapters and turn them into this like found journal that happens at the end of the book. So it's like this journey that this manuscript has gone on, but like, I don't throw away things until like we're in copy edits, because you just never know when you're going to use stuff. But I've done so much over the years structurally, and I've experimented with stuff. And so, yeah, it's been a fun journey. But by the time like my editor got involved, she was just asking me for like more things and not sort of like doing reconstructive surgery on the manuscript, which is great.
Yeah, how interesting. I love just kind of the tales of how things came to be. And that's one of my favorite books of all time. I love that book. So how fun.
Yeah. She's working on a sequel. I feel like she just turned it in recently. So there's going to be a part 2 out in these streets at some point.
Oh, that's good to know. That's
I have to reread that first one. I read it so long ago that I can not even remember. Wasn't there a movie?
Have you watched the TV show on HBO?
I haven't.
I would, they play around a little bit with some of the rules. I would read the book again and then watch the show so that you understand like they're two, and even the movie, all three of them are like 3 very different sort of takes on the original story, but it's still just like really fascinating.
Yeah.
I like the show. I thought it was
interesting.
Wow. So interesting. Thanks for that news too.
Yeah.
Kind of along those lines, Christy was wondering, you kind of talked a little bit about what you were working on next. Is there a timeline for that yet, or not necessarily? Do you have the flexibility to work on that?
I do, because nobody's looking for my book 2, not the publisher. I mean, you guys are, like, it's different, right? But I'm actually excited to dive into the parents' lives. Some of us are the kind of folks who go to our parents and grandparents and ask for like all the tea. We're like, listen, I'm an adult now. You can tell me what happened. And so I just see Fifi as somebody who would have over the years asked her mom for like the real stories about like her life growing up, because Stacia's mom, Fifi's mom, and Precious's dad, they actually all used to hang out once upon a time. And it's just kind of loosely alluded to in the book, but I've just kind of always known it like in this story world. And so I'm excited to see what I discover like writing, and there's no real timeline for it, but I'm working on the TV show. I'm working on a few other TV shows. And so I think I think in the future, what you'll have for me is like some content on television, definitely another book in the next, coming years, couple years, and then some short stories that I hope to like that are kind of not associated with anything. So I am like just getting started, and I hope you guys will rock with me, in the future.
Yes, we love to hear that. And how nice for you that you can take your time developing a story and not feel rushed, especially after going through this process of, a decade of having this story and just feeling like you can make this next one what you would like. So
yeah. And it's like cheating because I'm literally still promoting Last Summer on State Street. And then next spring I'll be promoting it in the UK.
yeah.
So nobody's expecting me to like work on another book. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like sneak off now.
Oh, I love that. Well, we'll be rooting for you and we'll be on the lookout.
Yeah.
Jenny has a question for you. Go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah. First of all, just thank you for writing this book. I absolutely loved it. I think it's just a great read all together and like perfect for August.
Yeah.
And when Kelly and Ivana initially put the chat together, was looking to purchase the book and trying to support some local bookstores. And I like two of them that I went into like didn't have the books or were out of copies. So I ended up doing the audio book, which I actually really loved. And to everybody that I've been recommending it to, like I thought it was fabulous. And just wondered if you had any influence in who the narrator was.
Again, I will preface this by saying I have been very fortunate in this whole publishing process. They're like, here are 4 voice actors. Like, go ahead and choose your top 2. We'll see if they're available. So, like, I got to choose Shayna Smalls. She has voiced a few of Britt Bennett's books, and I've really liked them and liked her voice. And so, yeah, like I had a chance to like choose her and cross my fingers, and she just happened to be available. And then I actually this summer listened to the audiobook on a drive to like northern Wisconsin, just to kind of like wrap the book in my head in like one go. So I definitely see the value in like listening to it, because I actually don't think I could read this book. Like I need some years, because I've like been in this manuscript like for so many years, but it was great to hear it. Like it's a different way to experience your own writing. And so I would definitely say like, yeah, and there are some people who are just they just don't read books. Like that's just not their jam. And so definitely like encourage them to like download the audiobook and listen to it. And yeah, it's I think it's so great that we have those options.
Yeah, I
So
really enjoyed
you.
it. And thank you too, just for how, like there was definitely characters that I was cheering for and wanted to see different outcomes. But at the same time, I think you were just true to how real life actually is. And like you said, like sometimes, we see those redemption stories right away. And sometimes it takes their whole life. So I think that's really exciting.
Even like Precious doesn't go back. Precious is like, I'm good. And I think like it was a choice I made. Like as a writer, I'm like, it's just too cookie cutter that everybody's like, we're gonna go back. Like we're gonna walk back into this traumatic situation, and we don't have to. And so she's just, and who knows when she'll be ready to go back or if she ever will. But yeah, to your point, I really just wanted to like be true to these characters and to real life, and things aren't wrapped up in a bow. There's some folks who really struggle with like what happened to Tanya. Like I've been in some other book clubs and people are like, did she get a funeral? And I'm like, the last time we saw her, like she was in a stairwell and things weren't great. And you're asking me to write things right now for you. But yeah, it's just people do sort of, it's like a hard, it's hard sometimes for people to think about what happened to characters and to like sit with the way things end sometimes.
Yeah. And then when they go back at the end too, and you have it where they, some people go back and they watch them just join back up with their gang when, there's clearly this other path that they could take, but it's real life.
Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for checking it out. And yeah, it's interesting. Like keeping this thing on the shelf has been like crazy. And then I also heard recently that someone went into a library and they're number 234 on the wait list to check it out of the library. So I'm trying to figure out what I can do about that because if people want to read this book, like I really want them to be able to read it. But I've never even like heard of a book like being unavailable like weeks after it like comes out. So it's wild.
That's what we're all seeing too. That's why you go, girl. Rebecca, is your hand up? Sorry, I see the little icon thingy, but that might be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Rebecca.
So I'm in Milwaukee and I have kind of like a
Hey.
statement and a question. Actually, I'm in Racine, so I'm pretty close to where you are. But
I have family there.
do you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, so I guess part of my, and I'm like in a spotlight because I'm in a very dark room. Sorry.
You're like good.
You mentioned something that was like close to my heart, and that is I was a retail buyer, but I was always working side jobs. And you said you were working like 3 jobs, and you're dating. I'm married with a little kid now who's a Bears fan. I'm a Packers fan. But as I have one girl in her 40s who's single, I was like, girl, I was just thinking, you've got such a phenomenal personality and you are so bubbly that I can't for the life of me. Like, I wish I had somebody to set you up with because you can't be on dating sites. Like, it's a disservice.
Oh, no. Dating sites are trash. I'm sorry if anybody works for any dating sites.
But like, I'm just sitting here listening to you and you're so funny and so I'm like, oh, she can't be.
Rebecca, I appreciate it.
I really hope things work out for you.
I'm not worried. Like, I'm not worried at all.
But I mean, like on that note, because I told Kelly and the girls, like, again, reiterating this point of like, we felt like it was a memoir. And so that was really captivating. But to the other point I was making about like your life, I mean, not that it would be a memoir, but you could do a comedic take on a girl, working and dating. And I think it would go over really well.
It's in the works. It's in the works because I have a good friend who is from Normandy. And when I met her, she was like living with her parents in Provence. We met in grad school. And at one point we were roommates when we were in college. And then she went back home. And the both of us were looking for a great man and trying to write and babysitting. She was in Paris and I was in Chicago. And I was like, girl, this is a book or a TV show or something. So I think at some point I'm going to write our story because it's really, really funny. And also, like, I was like more interested in dating and she's more just like terrified by the thought of actually like having to like look a guy in the eyes at all. And so so it's coming. Rebecca, just hang on.
Yay.
But I am going to be in Milwaukee on September 28th at
Boswell Books.
I
saw your poster. I was really excited about that.
Yeah,
that's my birthday.
So she's gonna be out on the town. She doesn't have time to be talking about books.
I am not taking my husband. I am just being selfish and going there.
Yes, nice. Well, I will see you around Racine at some point.
My
family won't move. I want them to move to Milwaukee so I could at least be like in a city, and they're just like, why? And I'm just like, well, I'll be in Chicagoland then. I just
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
So fun. Are there any other last questions that we've missed just before we try to take a picture? Because usually we like to, if you have a copy of the book, even if it's on your phone, if we can snap a picture. But if anybody has any more questions, this is
I have a quick selfish question for Jenny and I. We're in Michigan and we're just wondering if Toya is coming.
So let's see. I was in Kalamazoo in like April. We're in Michigan.
Grand Rapids.
Ooh, so I used to live in Berrien Springs.
Oh.
And I would drive up to Grand. So I was in seminary there. I have like a whole, I've worked everywhere and done everything that's connected to children. babysitting, nanny, youth pastor, run after school program, everything. And so I was in seminary in Berrien Springs, Michigan, and I would go up to Grand Rapids to have like some city life. I'm like, oh, Grand Rapids, save me. So yeah, but to answer your question, listen, if you've got like a library connection up there, like some universities, tell them to like call my people. I will get in my car and I will drive up there.
Wow.
I know my publicist has some connections up in Kalamazoo because Bonnie Jo Campbell is like local there, and she also represents her. And so we've been talking about Kalamazoo next year, but definitely like I will show up. Michigan has a place in my heart. Like I was a Michigander for 3 years. So
Okay. I drive to Kalamazoo for sure. Jenny and Ella road trip. That's good. And before we take our picture too, I know that we're all wondering, this is a question that always comes up. What are some of your most recent or favorite reads or authors that you've enjoyed?
Yeah, let's see. So I've been reading a lot of essays like Sam Irby, who's also like from this area. I read a lot of Dave Sedaris. I don't write funny stuff like him just yet, but I think he's been so influential just in how like he takes stuff from his life and it's like he's just telling you a story over some coffee and like leaving nothing out. So definitely like some essay stuff. I like science fiction. I try not to read things that are too close to like what I'm writing, especially if I am like, and I have been like revising this book for the last 15 years. So I literally just got to read like Brett Bennett and like new stuff by Jacqueline Woodson, because I just wanted to make sure I was telling like my Black girl story and not being like influenced. But like growing up, or at least once I got to college, I was definitely reading like Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, like all the folks who like took their towns and cities and like wrote about like women and friendship. So yeah, and I'm the new folks like what is her name? Lila Motley, who wrote like Nightcrawling.
Yeah.
I just like these books are everywhere. And I just really want to like read like the new folks and the people who I hope to meet and be in conversation with. And so you guys, the book clubs, the bookstagrammers, like I'm always trying to see like what's hot, and then just like I get a copy. And though going into bookstores now is a little bit of a different vibe. It's like people know who I am. I can't just like sneak around. But it's great. I'm here for it. I show up my Sharpie. I'm like, I will sign whatever you have in the store and also ring these books up. Thanks.
Awesome. Great. Well, I think we're ready for our picture. Ivana, you know how to take it, right?
I can do it. Control-Shift-4, pretty sure.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know. Like, let me just test it out first though. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, that's it. Okay, ready?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, did you like that sound?
Yeah, it sounds
Such
pretty
dramatic snap, right?
Oh, thank you, Toya. You're amazing. You have so much energy and so much just spunk.
This is fun. I love crashing these book clubs. I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
Fun.
And then I always crash land. Somebody's always in the middle of like you know their comment, and I just like pop up, and I'm like, what happened?
Oh, amazing. Well, we wish you the best of luck with everything to come. We're going to be watching for all of it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Wonderful. Thanks so much, guys.
Have a great
night.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Toya.
I will.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thanks, girls. Oh, I love it. And Grandma did so well with Benjamin too.
Oh yeah, thanks, Mom. She's in the next room.
Way to go.
I heard him squawking a few times. I'm like, oh boy.
Hanging in there. He's doing great.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, thanks, girls. That was awesome.
Yes.
You're hanging in there, Kel. You're gonna, you have your night ahead of you, and
oh yeah, I do.
right. I know it'll all pass soon, but look at, oh my God, that face. He's just so delicious. cutie.
He's cute. I know. Thank you so much for the gift box with like the sweet onesie and the book and the stuff for the boys. That was so sweet. Luke was
Such
just
a
like, and
big
Caleb
deal.
were so, they're like, are these dinosaurs for me? I'm like, yes, they are.
Oh.
So sweet.
Siblings are always the ones, you know, who matter.
Oh, is he waving?
Yeah, he's waving. I couldn't figure out how to leave because I thought you girls could just chat. So
Aw.
nice job, by the way, both of you.
You don't know how to leave?
I found it. It was behind my mouse, the little big red button.
She's
So,
If I had to leave before everybody else, I wouldn't know how to leave either.
all right, I'm leaving.
Close my computer.
Bye. Oh, he's waving on his own. Bye.
Hi, buddy. That's so nice that your mom
I
is
haven't
around.
left yet. Sorry.
No, she's working
Here.
on it. There she goes.
I'm leaving.
There she goes.
So cute. That's so, she's just, yeah, how great to have her there.
Yes, I know. Well, thank you for taking like the lead on this. And I'm like, I just feel like I can't. I read the book in May and I'm like, I seriously feel like I need to reread it. So today I went back and like went through it and I'm like, oh, that's nice. I did, like, I knew I loved it, but
I read it like a month ago and I feel like that, and I have no new baby. So, I mean, I remember when Graham was born, I Googled like slurred speech. Like I thought something was happening to me, and it's sleep deprivation. Like it does.
yeah,
Yeah.
I believe it. I'm like, I like, you know, when you feel like that week between like Christmas and New Year's and you're like, what day is it? Like, is it December? Is it January? Like that's how I feel like all the time.
100% know what you mean. You did great. He's awesome. Now you can go and snuggle him till he falls asleep and wakes back up.
Yeah. Yes. Well, she was delightful. I want to contact my local indie because I feel like they would reach out to her. And
she was so different tonight. When she was at the store, she was way more not like she just wasn't as boisterous. She was more like serious, because I feel like it was more of like a quiet, like intimate setting. You know, at the bookstore here, it's you can just be like, you know, you can be your lively self. So
I know, I feel like, so Schuler's is like my local indie and they've like blown up on TikTok and stuff. And like, I've chatted with them online a few times. So I feel like if I emailed them, like they would reach out to her. And when I went to buy the book, they only had 2 copies. And I was like, oh, that's so sad. And I had to like go to the back and like look to try to find it. Like it wasn't like on a front table or anything. And I was like,
that's surprising. Maybe they just didn't know yet.
I know.
Now it's like, if you want me to give you her publicist, who's very responsive, she like responds immediately.
Oh yeah. Hold on, I'm gonna stop this recording.